Lewie Pugh is here, by the way. It's Washington Trucking Week, and I'm going to jump right in by reading a little quote here from the president of OOIDA, Mr. Todd Spencer. Due to ongoing safety concerns, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association strongly encourages you to immediately suspend state's authority to issue non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses for interstate commerce. And that's where we begin with Lewie. How you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
I don't have any complaints. It's a great day in New Orleans. It's only like, suffocatingly hot as opposed to death-defyingly hot. So, we're pretty happy about that. How is the world treating you up in Grain Valley or wherever your adventures are taking you?
Oh, it's been pretty hot up here, too, but we finally got a break in the weather yesterday. It's starting to cool off a little bit. And actually, we had a little bit of fog and dampness this morning, so that's nice.
Oh, it's a nice way to. It's kind of like I call it a whisper or a hint. Like if you just hold on long enough, we have a little bit of this in store for you later on down the road. So just hang in tight, and maybe good things are coming. A lot of good things have been coming the way of truck driving in the last couple of months. A lot of bold initiatives, a lot of things that OOIDA has been pushing for quite some time. But there is unfinished business, as you like to say. There's always things that need to get taken care of. Can you kind of set up for us and explain, like I said, a lot of our people that are listening are first-time drivers kind of getting onboarded into the world of trucking. Tell people what a non-domiciled is, and then we can kind of talk what OOIDA wants to do about it.
Yeah, well, these non-domicile CDLs were being pushed and got through, and I think in 2019 now. And what the whole idea behind it was supposedly that if someone went to a trucking school or somewhere in a different state from where they lived, or if they went to trucking school and they were trying to get tested, they could go to another state and get a test and get their CDL, even if it wasn't their home state. And what it's turned into, unfortunately, which I don't think anybody really saw this coming, but what it's turned into is people from foreign nations all over the world are getting CDLs, non-domicile CDLs, and driving truck. And the problem we have, and what OOIDA's been, since this has sort of raised its ugly head the first of the year or last fall or something, whenever it's really started to take shape, is that nobody knows how many there are. Nobody knows who's getting them. I mean, and unfortunately, just what we saw, what we're taking from what happened in Florida last week, that gentleman not only had a non-domicile, but a regular CDL. So, as you know well, and the folks out there know OOIDA, and for those who don't, we've been screaming for decades that we need to raise the bar of trucking. And unfortunately, for too long, there's been this false, fake driver shortage narrative, and that's what's allowed stuff like this non-domicile CDL and very, very weak requirements to get a driver's license, a CDL driver's license, to say the least, has come into play. And we've been pushing back on that. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that we said were going to happen if we didn't do this are really starting to unfold in a big way here, and it's not in a good way.
Yeah, and by the way, Lewie, we actually had the joy of having Andy Polikoff on the show, the head of the CVTA, and he actually came in to make a point about this too, because everything seems to kind of be pointing back to that accident that we're talking about in Florida. What's interesting about it is somebody had to let him into the country. Somebody actually had to get him a CDL. Somebody actually had to hire him. I mean, and like I said, we're all responsible to a large degree. We're all responsible for what it is that happened. And since we're all responsible, we can all take action to stop it by stopping the actually guilty parties. And even though this might not have prevented it, the really kind of cold thing here, what upsets me the most is the fact that it didn't need to get to that point. And by doing what you guys are doing, you might be able in the long run to prevent the next one from happening by simply taking care of this. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we got to start somewhere. I mean, the long and short, nothing moves fast, unfortunately, in government. This is moving faster, which is good. But the thing is, we've got to figure out who these people are. We've got to stop issuing these things. And we need to raise the standards and the bar of getting into trucking. At the end of the day, this person should have never got behind the wheel in the first place.
And
I mean, that's
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
That's
sorry.
the sad truth. And I'm sorry. That's the sad truth and reality in all this. Most of these people should never get a license. And if we had much stricter standards in getting a CDL, that would stop a lot of this right away.
And that's why, by the way, that's why we brought on Andy, who actually had deep concerns about where this guy got his CDL from, and I kind of want to talk about the non-domiciled situation in this way too, to kind of tell people you actually were very generous, I thought, in what you said. This was never the intention. What has happened? It's almost a matter of closing a loophole. Louis, please tell me if I get this wrong, because this is one of those places where I'm like not entirely clear. What happens is that it was designed to allow somebody from one state, meaning the United States, to be able to get their CDL in another state. Because of the way the law was written, it actually has created this massive gaping loophole that allows people who are not from here to actually get a non-domiciled. Is that what we're talking about? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's what's happened, and it continues to happen. And again, it all stems back. We should have never done it in the first place. I mean, again, we're always looking for ways, or not we, I should say, folks over at ATA and other places, and big fleets are always looking for ways to get people behind the wheel as quickly as they can. And by doing that, that makes it to where they don't have to pay them like the professionals that they are. We're not training them to be professionals. We're not teaching them to be professionals, so they don't have to pay them as professionals. And it's this massive churning mess that we've been in for decades now since deregulation. It just continues to get worse. And as Todd Spencer says, when your job sucks, you got to find more suckers. And unfortunately, that's what,
I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have heard that before. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, Todd's a wordsmith, but and he's right. And unfortunately, that's what we are. I say this all the time. We don't rush people to be electricians. We don't rush people to be carpenters. We don't rush people or rush anybody for all these other blue-collared, jobs that you have to be trained and have some experience. Why are we or skilled? Why do we want to continue to do that with truckers? And unfortunately, these other professional blue-collar professions, they get paid correctly. They get paid for all their time. They're paid overtime. They're paid when they're not working, even if they're at work, and unfortunately in trucking, we're the complete opposite. And that's why people don't stay. That's why they're constantly looking for a new place to draw people from that they can continue to treat like this. And unfortunately, it causes mass carnage on our highways. My new thing I've been saying in Washington, I just said it when I testified a few weeks ago. If you really want to care about highway safety, the first things that we need to start focusing on, all this other stuff is just noise. We need to focus on training the drivers. We need to focus on paying the drivers, and we need to focus on giving them a safe place to rest and sleep at night. Those three things right there that we need to take seriously and start doing in our industry. Or you can come up with all the safety gadgets and technology and all the stuff in the world that you want to come up with. But until we start doing that, and we need to train the people to drive cars too, because that gets lost in the measure. And I know DOT doesn't have any oversight on that, but people in cars need to be trained to operate on trucks. Till we start doing those things, we're never going to see safety numbers turn around.
What is it? Life, pay, equipment, and then ultimately technology. Ultimately the idea that, do I get enough pay? Do I have with that pay the ability to actually go live a decent life? And in fact, am I in technology that's going to keep me alive? And it's the same argument we've been having for so long, and it feels like a back and forth game. So I'm asking OOIDA, what are they doing? What are they asking for? Kind of unpack that, and then we'll kind of pivot very nicely into how our listeners and your members can actually get involved in making a difference in this situation. Because some of this is really about state pressure too, that everybody can't go to Washington and talk in front of a committee like you have been afforded that opportunity and do it very well. But there are things people can do. But what is OOIDA calling for? What is this call to action all about?
Yeah, we sent a letter to DOT on Monday, asking them to cease and desist on all non-domiciled CDLs while they are actually investigating the process of investigating the non-domicile, try to figure out who's giving them what states, who they're getting, who has them, all these kind of things. we said until that is concluded and they come up with a different way to handle this or to do away with the program, I mean, we feel they should just do away with the program totally and just be done. But until they investigate and have some results and know how they're going to continue this forward or do away with it or whatever in a safe manner, then they just need to quit giving non-domiciled CDLs, period. And we've also followed that up by sending letters out to, I think, the 43 states that issue these to the governors of their states, asking them to make sure they're doing it in their state as well. Because until we have a control of the problem or a handle on the problem or know what the problem is and how to solve it, why do we want to continue adding to the problem?
Yeah, and by the way, that's, this is, there are times that people call for a shutdown or an investigation. And I won't lie, Louis, I roll my eyes. I'm like, give me a break. This is one of those places where if, in fact, this has a major impact on what's going on the road, meaning like it actually pulls a lot of people off the road, that's a problem in and of itself. Let's say, let's say that, all 43 states, that everybody takes action and everybody really shuts down the program and really shuts down this whole thing. If it causes a big gap, then we actually understand what's going on in another way. Are you following me here? That this is one of those places where you can call for, a pause on this to see what the effects of it are, to see what kind of ripple effect it has across the industry. That's kind of the thought here too, correct?
Yeah, that would help too. And I mean, we know since we're in the longest down freight recession in history that we don't have a capacity problem. So, I mean, probably shutting this down in some way would help right that ship, help a little quicker. But, that remains to be seen because, again, we don't know how many of these folks are out there. But it would help with the capacity. But, again, what we need to start doing is all this goes back, and I hate to keep going back to this whole fake driver shortage. If we would just pay people and invest in truckers, we wouldn't need all these things. We wouldn't need all these trucks. If shippers and receivers would do the right thing and load the trucks, if the motor carriers would start charging them for tying the driver's time up and then paying the driver correctly, we wouldn't need as many trucks as we got now because the whole freight chain would move so much more efficiently. 70% of all goods are moved exclusively on truck. That's a lot of freight in this country, and that's a lot of things. Unfortunately, because drivers waste, 20 to 25 hours a week on average just sitting around waiting to get loaded or unloaded instead of driving, that creates so much more capacity that we need in our industry that's really not needed. And unfortunately, the drivers, we always hear, well, if we do that, it's going to cost the consumer. Well, truckers have been paying that for 40 years. The driver has been eating that for 40 years. Why should he have to eat that or she have to eat that?
Louis, I don't know if you got a chance to hear Jim Park at all, but he got kind of on his soapbox because there was recently a strike up in Canada with the airline attendants, and they were complaining because they were doing unpaid work. They work in blocks that they don't get paid until the plane doors close. So they're doing all this stuff until the plane doors officially close, and it turns out. I've made the joke all the time that UPS wins their strike because everybody knows they're UPS drivers, and flight attendants are getting a lot of sympathy from the general public in Canada because unless you are the problem on the plane, you usually like the flight attendant. And this is a pivot here into the second topic that you wanted to kind of get into. But, I was kind of hoping that you would take a moment, given that you are such a great ambassador for the trucking industry and having been a trucker for such a long time. To kind of talk at length about, this article that Mark wrote about truckers still have time to shape the next highway bill, but it all kind of plays into the same thing about truckers being good ambassadors for their industry, even in the smallest ways, because the more people know truckers and like them, the more they see people like, as I said before, Trucker Bosun and Ten Ring behind the wheel of trucks and not just a truck. Are you digging where I'm coming from, my friend?
Yeah, and I mean, it takes all of us to fix our industry. It took our whole industry to get to where we are, and it took us in our industry to, it's going to take a long time to fix it, of course. But the thing is, truckers, you are the number one ambassador. I hear all the time when I go to truck shows and talk to members and truckers, thanks for what you do, really appreciate what you're saying. I'm like, are you calling your lawmaker? And they're like, well, we don't know what to say to them. I don't call. That's why we belong to OOIDA. Well, OOIDA is only as strong as our membership. and our membership's active. So it does take all. I can go to Capitol Hill and testify, and our lobbyists can go to Capitol Hill and talk to lawmakers. But if the phones aren't ringing, then they're only half paying attention. When they start getting calls, from constituents in their district saying, I'm a trucker and, my carrier doesn't pay for me to sit around for hours upon end, or my carrier does, or whatever the problem is. I can't find I'm wasting 2 hours every night trying to find a place to park, or I can't find safe places to park, or whatever the issue is you're having, broker trainer, anything. If they're not receiving those calls, they don't really pay attention. When they start receiving those calls, it makes it our job easier, and it makes it much, much easier to get the things that you want and we're trying to get for you across the finish line. Because, you can follow the money on most things in Washington, and a lot of times the money trail wins because the American people are sleeping. But we as the American people still have the best power, and truckers. So you're a huge voting bloc. Truckers are a huge voting bloc. And it's the one thing that politicians worry about more than the money is getting their job back. So when constituents start shutting the phones down, that's when it gets crazy. I was in D.C. last year when they were going to ban TikTok, or a year before, I forget when it was. It was crazy that week, the amount of people who were calling in over TikTok. And, if that's the thing, that's fine. But I wish truckers and the American people would have the same passion for things that really, really, truly affect your daily lives, whether it's tax reform or driver or any of this kind of stuff. You need to stay involved and call your congressman. And OOIDA makes it very easy for you. We have a website, fightingfortruckers.com. You can go right on that website. You can find out who your lawmakers are. Their phone numbers are there. You can contact them that way. You can send them an email directly right off that site and tell them. And you are the expert. Don't think you don't know how to talk. You know your industry better than anybody. There's a very small handful of just a couple elected officials that know anything about trucking and trucks. And so the only thing they know is what lobbyists tell them. And I can guarantee there's lobbyists in D.C. that are working against you that are telling them things that aren't helping you. So you need to call and be professional, but say, this rule or this regulation, if it's passed, it will help me this way, or if this rule or regulation is passed, it's going to hurt me this way. And be professional and give them real world. Lawmakers like to hear that stuff and want to hear that stuff.
And the other thing is to remind people, and by the way, you and I have had some really lengthy conversations because I've actually been talking to you when just a couple of days after we talked, you're actually on a plane or in a truck or in a car heading on over to a state house as well, too. I tell people the chances of you striking up any sort of friendship or relationship with your congressman is a little more difficult, but doing it with a state rep or a state senator, that is well within your reach as a human being. Those people in particular really want to hear from their constituents because in those places, every vote really does count. And speaking of your voice counting, let's talk a little bit about shaping the next highway bill, shall we?
Sure.
So, yeah, talk about what truckers should do. But this is about making comments, right? This is about actually making comments and going where they need to go because there's an opportunity. They've extended this in regards to the comment period, have they not? Tell people what's going on.
Yeah, we got a new highway. This is highway bill time. That's every 5 years these come around. It's kind of the Super Bowl of trucking. We're going to find out, there's going to be legislation, hopefully, to help truckers. There's going to be legislation that's going to try to hurt truckers. I mean, we're going into a great time where we have an administration that has been listening to truckers and been showing that they are in a couple of actions that they've made in the past. And hopefully that continues. And, we're urging Congress to do the same thing. We're telling Congress this could be the most driver-friendly highway bill in history. But it's going to take drivers calling in, The Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act is out there, restroom access, the road conditions that we need to make sure the Highway Trust Fund is funded correctly and fairly. We believe it's fuel taxes. It may take an increase. I mean, compared to anything else out there that's being suggested, whether it's tolling or VMTs or anything, fuel taxes, even a small increase, is a much safer, much better bet for truckers than any of these other things. So there's that. There's a concern that we need to keep our eye on what they're going to do on liability insurance minimums. There's already grumblings of trying to raise that again, which we know that's not necessary and would be a huge burdensome cost on truckers if that would come through. Of course, they want to continue to lower the CDL age without, safety mandates and other kind of stuff like that. That's stuff that's not good. That in some ways is no better than the whole non-domicile thing. And so there's lots of things out there, and that you as a trucker need to be reaching out to your lawmakers and talking about these things to head them off at the pass.
Okay, we have just a little bit of time left here, but I want to get two questions in, one of which is a continuation of what we're talking about right now. But the second one is really fun, and I think you know where I'm going because we're almost into football season, so I need to prep up for your prognostication, Louis. But when they write those comments, it's the same thing as talking to their congressman, right? I mean, it really is. It's the same thing as talking to the staff, to really kind of give real-world examples, to make sure that they think about particular instances, and to really kind of lay out the real-world ramifications of what it is that's going on here, rather than trying to be a policy wonk, be somebody who has a personal story. Fair?
Fair. That's it. You don't have to be a policy expert. You don't have to be a government. What you are is a trucking expert. And, I mean, that's all you have to be, and that's what you are. So, like I said, real-world situations of how these things either help you or hurt you, and why your lawmakers should support or vote against, depending on what the thing is. And, again, it's very easy to see a lot of this stuff that's in play. If you go to fightingfortruckers.com, you can see what OOIDA is working on, the bills that are out there that help or hurt trucking, bills and mandates that maybe need comments, or just bills that need things sent to your lawmaker. And again, you can do that all from Fighting for Truckers. And as I always say, you can go on there and send a comment to a lawmaker, or a comment on some sort of a petition where it could actually change things or make a difference faster than what you can put something out on social media complaining about it.
All right, Louis, got a few minutes left here. I'm not going to mention the school up north at all. I'm simply going to ask you how your Buckeyes going to do this season.
Well, as I say, I hope every season, undefeated in another national championship. So, always got to think positive. I think we got a big test right out the gate. Texas is coming to town, and so it should be a big game. I mean, the opening up with Texas, they should play hard. It should be a great game, and I hope we end up with steaks on our plates. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Louis, right now, there are two games that are going to determine a whole lot of stuff in an awful hurry. Texas versus Ohio State is one, and Clemson versus LSU is the other. And we'll have a really clear sense of what two teams have the fast track to the first positions in the playoffs almost immediately after those two games kind of play themselves out. Our good friend Lewie Pugh has joined us this morning. He's Executive Vice President of OOIDA. Louis, one more time with feeling, tell people where they can go to get involved, not just in regards to making comments, but also to let you guys know where you guys are doing great and where you guys should maybe focus your attention.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, if you want more information on just OOIDA itself, the easiest place to go is OOIDA.com, or you can call in here to OOIDA. It's 816-229-5791. Again, you can get that number off of OOIDA.com because I know people are driving. That's easier to remember. And join OOIDA. If you've listened to this, call our membership department, tell them you heard it. We'll give you a $10 discount for listening to me and you go back and forth, Jimmy, and talk. And we're happy to do that on a yearly membership. Also, if you want to find out more about what's going on in the advocacy world, you can go to fightingfortruckers.com. It's a great place to file comments. Of course, we're on all social media. And, we're stronger. I can't say it enough. Don't be a part of let's fix the problem. Join OOIDA. The larger we are, the stronger our membership is, the more power we have. We are the largest trucking association. We were started by truckers. We're run by truckers. Todd, our president, was a trucker. I was a trucker. My board of directors here, 22 of them are truckers. And so OOIDA gets it. We know where the rubber meets the road, and the way we really move the needle is everyone moving it with one voice toward the same thing, and that's what OOIDA does for you. And you know, be a part of it. We love truckers. You know, I say it all the time, but we appreciate truckers every single solitary day. I know how bad the job can be. I know how it feels like everybody in the world is against you because they're mad because of what you brought them. You know, some enforcement agents or officer might be messing with you over some silly violation. It has nothing to do with safety. Everybody's got their hands out. They want you to pay to park. They want you to do all these things, and nobody seems to care while you're keeping this country going, truckers, and we appreciate that, and we know all the hardship you go through, and thank you for what you do, because our country would not be anywhere if it wasn't for the men and women behind the wheel. So thanks to all the truckers, and please join OOIDA. You know, the more of you got, the stronger we are, and we love y'all. So thank you.
And by the way, don't forget, I'm very proud to say this. Immediately after Road Gang Radio concludes at 11, Trucking with OOIDA with Scott and Ashley begins after that. Lewie, it's always good to have the cavalry here. Thank you so much, my friend. Get out there and have a great day. And, you know, I'll say it, go Buckeyes. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, buddy. Talk to you later.